Good morning. Good morning. Day one of my beekeeping challenge. So, Naturopathic Beekeeping Challenge. And I really wanted to get things going. It's the new year. Lots of people are excited about what they're going to do for the year. Now's the time to start planning. And with bees, you do need to plan ahead. I often have people say to me in June or July, oh, I'd like to keep bees, but it's a bit late then. It's a bit late. You have to start early. You have to start early. And because now is such a crucial time for saving the bees, and so many people are wanting to keep bees, but perhaps without the full understanding of the responsibility we have once we do have our bees. So, welcome to day one of the challenge. Great to see you all here with me. I'm really, really excited because it just gives me a chance to share some of the things I've learned over the years. I'm in my 10th year now of keeping bees, and I now look after around 35 colonies in total. So some are my own, some are my clients. But you learn a lot. The more bees you have, the more you learn. And I use a variety of hives depending on my clients and depending on my needs. So I have lots of different things. So yes, I will be recording this so that I will post it in the group later. So if you miss, if you can't stay for the whole thing, that's absolutely fine. So the purpose of the challenge is each of the next 3 days, so today included, I'm just going to give you a little challenge, so something to think about, so that by the end of the 3 days, you've got the foundations in place for getting started with bees. You've got the right intentions, you know what you need to do. And on Thursday, I'll be running a webinar which gives you a lot more detail about keeping bees, and particularly in the naturopathic way, which is the way I keep bees and the way I advocate we should be keeping bees. And what's really, really exciting is when I first started keeping bees in this kind of naturopathic way, so in more alignment with nature, I was a bit of a maverick, and I was getting a lot of criticism and a lot of challenges. But science is now backing it up. There are more and more scientists saying that if we're going to look after bees, if we're going to preserve the bees, if we're going to save them, then we have to change the way that we're taking care of them. And luckily, I've got 10 years experience now of keeping them in a way that is more in alignment with nature. So today's challenge is all about, why are you keeping bees? Why do you want to keep bees? Now, most people, their first thing is, well, I want my own honey. I was the same. I took honey every day because it helped with my hay fever. And so it made sense that, if I had my own bees, then I could have my own honey and I wouldn't have to be buying jars. And although that, there's no good or bad reasons for keeping bees, but it is one of the reasons, but it's not as simple as that. So just by putting a hive in your garden does not guarantee you any honey at all. And a lot of people, when they start the beekeeping journey, it can be a few years of heartbreak because not all bees survive. And it's really upsetting if you've got your bees and you love them to bits and you're caring for them and you can't get them through the first year or the first 2 years. So there's a lot that goes behind just getting a single jar of honey. So some people think, oh, I want to save the bees are endangered, so I want to save the bees. Now, that is a bit more complex because in actual fact, the honeybees are not endangered. Not as endangered as the native solitary and bumblebees all around the world. These are the bees that are, just because we don't take honey from them, people aren't watching them, they're not taking care of them. And so they're the first bees that get wiped out from the use of pesticides or agricultural methods where all the hedgerows are ripped out, through lack of forage, where people just tarmac over their front drive, not thinking about the wildlife that was feeding on those weeds or the flowers that were there before. So saving the bees is a bit more complex. Now, because we have lost so many of the solitary and bumblebees, honeybees are now more important for the pollination. So for instance, a red mason bee would do the work of 250 honeybees with pollinating apple trees. So a red mason bee is a much more effective pollinator. However, they're losing their habitat. They nest and they lay eggs in old nettle stems, thistle stems that would normally be left around the edges of fields and in hedgerows, but they're being tidied up, they're being removed. So those bees don't have the habitat and they can't fly the large distances that honeybees do. So they have an issue where they're just not, they're not able to thrive. And so we're having to bring in the honeybees. So in that respect, because the honeybees are having to be brought in for more pollination for all kinds of crops, then that then puts them at risk. And we can see that in parts of America where we have these acres and acres and acres, thousands, hundreds of thousands of acres of almonds, which are grown commercially. California provides 80% of the globe's almonds. So imagine that, 80% of the globe's almonds. Now, because the farming is so intensive and because there's miles and miles and miles of monocultures, it means there isn't the habitat for the native solitary and bumblebees. So that region of America has no native bees left. And so they have to have the honeybees shipped in. So, all well and good, you just bring in the honeybees. Now, you can't leave honeybees there because there's only 3 weeks of food just while the almonds are blossoming. And the almonds only blossom in February. So it's a huge knock-on effect about the impact this has on honeybees. But the transportation of the bees all around America to pollinate these almonds kills 40 to 50% of the colonies. So I know of beekeepers who have shipped their bees, provided their bees for this mass pollination, and only got half their colonies back. Imagine that. Imagine, you know, if you've got 4 colonies and only 2 come back, you'd be devastated. So in that respect, the bees do need saving, but they don't need saving by having a hive, drenching it in chemicals and taking all the honey. That's not going to help save any bees at all. So really think hard. If you're going to save the bees, what is it you're doing for them? The other thing people do is they think, oh, I'm going to have bees, and they go to the local beekeeping association, which is great. You should, and you should join the groups. And they might be advised, oh yeah, we can get you bees. We ship in a package, and you'll be importing bees from all around the world. So bees are shipped in little packages, and you'll have a queen and you'll have a nuke, you know, you'll have a few worker bees with her. And then that's what you're going to use to establish a colony. Now, the problem with that is by shipping bees around the world, we live here, I'm in Somerset. And so we have a certain microclimate, or, you know, there is a climate, it is changing, but we have this climate here. And our native bee is the Apis mellifera mellifera, the dark bee, which lays eggs according to sunlight, or lays eggs according to sunlight and temperature, so mainly temperature. So if we have a cool summer, the queen will stop laying so many eggs. Brilliant, because then we often have a July where we could have 2 weeks of rain. And what you don't want is hundreds of thousands, queens laying 1,500 eggs a day. You don't want all those extra bees coming when there's no forage and when they can't fly. Now, if you ship in a Mediterranean queen, she's used to laying eggs by daylight. So we have the longer day, so she just carries on laying. And so they need more feeding. And so they'll either be eating all the honey that they've been collecting, or you're going to have to supplement that with sugar. And that goes down a whole other rabbit hole. So really think about what you're doing. So if you're going to save bees, then what you need to do is set up bait hives and provide a home for the bees that are already in your area, because there are wild bees and they are likely to swarm. They should be swarming. Healthy bees swarm, so you can be catching a swarm. So there's all these things to think about. Now, then there might be more practical things. You really want to have a candle making business and you want to have your own wax candle. Perhaps you're a herbalist, or you're into skincare and you want to make your own balms. And so you want to have your own beeswax. Brilliant. Maybe you're interested in other products from the hive, like propolis or royal jelly, pollen, all these different things that are gifts and medicine from the hive. So what I'd like you to do today, So this is your challenge. This is all you have to do, is with a pen and paper, just sit down, or pencil, just jot down, why is it you feel drawn to having bees? Is it just this heartfelt feeling, I know I have to work with bees? Brilliant. Then just say it, do it. If it's, do you know what? I just want my own honey. Great. I want to see, what is your why? Why do you want bees? And just have a think. And then I'd like you to share it in the group, in the comments. So join my Facebook group if you haven't already. So it's Creating a Buzz. Join the group. Send me a message if you can't find how to join it. You should be getting emails with reminders for these, and the emails have a button where you can press to join the group. So I'd love to see it in the group. Put your name, put why it is you want to have bees, and that'd be great. So that's all you have to do today. So it's a little bit of thinking, a little bit of really searching deep to think, why keep bees? So for my reason, of course, I had to think, why do I want bees? And I felt a deep yearning. I just felt I had to have bees. At the time bees came into my life, I was actually bed and wheelchair bound with Ehlers-Danlos. I used to be an artist. That's one of my paintings there, the landscape. And I fell really ill, and I had 7 years bed and wheelchair bound. And I knew I couldn't return to being an artist. So I had to think what I could do. And very much like a lot of us are having to think right now with the whole situation, the global situation where our lives are changing, instead of thinking what we want to do, we have to think what we can do. And so while I was bedbound, I knew I couldn't paint. I couldn't actually use my eyes. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch films, all those things you'd think you do. You think, oh, great, 7 years in bed, I could read so many books. I couldn't read any of them. Couldn't do jigsaw puzzles. Couldn't do any of that. So I had to think, well, what can I do? And before, I'd had 20 years as a really busy artist, and I'd always thought, oh, it'd be nice to keep bees, lovely to keep bees, but didn't have the time to find out about it, didn't know where I'd put them, just didn't have the time. Well, when I was ill, it was different, because I was laying in bed looking out in the garden, and I could have bees. I could have a hive in the gardens, and I could just watch the bees coming and going. And so that was part of my reason. It was something I could do. I felt drawn to it. But as I learned more, and as I got into having the bees, I realized that my why for having bees is learning from them. It really is learning about the connection between bees and humans. And the more I work with bees, the more I understand that the bees are that great connector. They connect the soil with the plants. The nectar from the plants goes to the bees, make the honey. The honey is healing for the people. The different plants produce different honeys. And the bees are the alchemists. They connect everything. So my why for keeping bees is learning from them. The more I work with them, the more I learn from them. And so the more wonder there is with bees. So that's my why. I love the honey, I love the propolis, but really it's learning. And 10 years in, I still am learning something new every day. So have a think, share in the group, and then I'll see you back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and we'll do the next thing, which is all about feeding the bees. So thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully this will just a little burst for Monday morning, and something that you can do to start on your journey for keeping bees. If you haven't yet registered for the webinar's on Thursday, and then a week on Thursday, I start my naturopathic beekeeping course, but I'll give more details about that on the webinar. So thank you very much, and I will see you all tomorrow morning.